Welcome to the Belly Brain Connection. I'm Hannah Winans. I'm a certified functional nutrition counselor, and I'm on a mission to help educate people about the connection between their gut health and mental well-being. Thank you so much for tuning in. I believe that our gut health is the cornerstone to our overall health, and when we nourish our bodies, we nourish our minds. Today is episode 10. It's a bit of a milestone episode, I feel like. I made a promise to myself when I started this that I would produce one episode per week for an entire year. So 10 episodes feels like a little bit of a drop in the bucket, but I'm excited about what's to come, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I learn, who I can help, and just where this little belly brain adventure takes me. And I want to thank you all for tuning in, and especially for those of you who've been with me since day one. I feel like we're forming a little bit of a community, and I'm excited to kind of grow this together. So for today, what I thought I would do is do kind of a quick summary of what we've covered in the past, because I know we've got some new folks who are subscribing to the channel and maybe haven't had a chance to go through all the episodes. So I wanted to do a little bit of a recap. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit more about leaky gut. I brought it up last episode, and I have kind of a story to share with you about something that came up this week for my husband and I that ties in nicely to leaky gut. And I've been thinking about leaky gut all week. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Of course, like all things belly brain, it's complicated. There's a lot to it. I'm just going to try and hit the high points, and you can always, kind of do your own research and investigating. And on that note, I need to be very clear that belly brain is for informational and educational purposes only. I am not a doctor. I am not giving any kind of medical advice. If you have medical questions, please consult your physician. So on that note, we'll get started, and we'll start off with the books that we've covered so far. And what I'm trying to do is every episode, I'm trying to bring something practical that you can take with you for the week that will help you in your gut health, mental health journey, and, just like practical tips. But then I'm also trying to bring you other information from the books that we're reading and the book reviews that we're doing. Although I am going to pause the books for a couple weeks because I'm hearing from people that they're in the process of reading some of these books. And so I think we all need a little bit of time to catch up. But, with 4 books going already and just the first 10 episodes, that's kind of a lot. So I'll kind of back off that for a little while, let everybody catch up. And but I will kind of recap what we've done so far. So the first book that we read was, or that we're maybe still reading, The Mind-Gut Connection by Dr. Imran Mayer. This book was great because it was kind of a little bit of a belly brain 101. It really describes in detail what's going on in our body and explains that gut brain connection, that gut brain axis. And when I say axis, it's AXIS. I know it sounds like I'm saying access, but it's axis. And so that book's great for that. The next book was This Is Your Brain on Food by Dr. Uma Nadu. I love this book because it felt empowering. She is a doctor as well as a chef and has some really good recommendations for food that can help our mood. And so I love that she uses that food as medicine approach. And she's got some great recipes in there. She's got a great personal story that she shares. So that's a great one. This is Brain. The next one was Brain Energy by Dr. Christopher Palmer. This is the catalyst for belly brain. This book is changing lives. The information in here is changing lives. This doctor is changing lives. If you have somebody in your life that is struggling with a mental health disorder, I highly recommend you read this book. He goes into the metabolic theory, which is the connection between metabolic health and mental health, and that's kind of on the forefront of all things mental health related these days. And then the next book was Super Gut. We went over this last week. This is by Dr. William Davis. This book's great because he goes into detail about explaining our gut microbiota, the good bugs that we need in our guts, the bad bugs that are in there. He has yogurt recipes. This got me making yogurt again. You can make yogurt that has certain strains of probiotic to target certain conditions that you want to heal in your body. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So those are the 4 books that we've covered so far. And on my website, bellybrain.com, I have all these books linked. I'm not selling them, but I just wanted to create a link so that it was easy for everybody to find. So as always, with all the episodes, everything that I'm talking about here, I am posting that information and links to these podcasts and links to my recommendations at bellybrain.com. So I'm hoping that's just a really easy resource for you to access and even share with people, right? So if you start having these conversations with people about gut health, mental health, it's surprising how that can come up once you start learning about it. So, send them to bellybrain.com if they're interested, and they can find out all kinds of great information there that might help them. And also share with them this podcast. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, bellybrain.com, Belly Brain Connection. Those are all places where people can find this great information. So that is kind of a little recap. What I wanted to talk about with leaky gut is that, first of all, I'll describe a little more in detail what leaky gut is. So in our intestines and in our stomach lining, in our stomach, we have what's called a mucus lining. I've also heard it called mucosa lining and mucosal lining. So we have this layer of mucus in our gut, and that's kind of the barrier that when we eat, it keeps the bad stuff out, right? So we want to keep certain bacterias and toxins out of our bloodstream. And that's what that mucosa lining is there for. But what happens is we can do things to sabotage that and damage that lining to where things can start sneaking through it and entering our blood system and then wreaking havoc on our bodies. So, signs of leaky gut could be, of course, given gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, but it also could be fatigue. It could be brain fog. It could be general inflammation, skin issues. I can't tell you how many times skin issues come up related to gut health. So with that leaky gut, it's just that lining is deteriorating and it's not doing what it needs to do. It's not protecting us the way it needs to. Things that can damage that mucosal lining, I think it's a given we can predict that it would be ultra processed foods, sugar, but alcohol and even NSAIDs, which like ibuprofen, Aleve, those can all do damage to our gut lining. And how many of us are taking ibuprofen, Aleve, some kind of NSAID pretty regularly in our lives, right? And alcohol too. I mean, a lot of us, I'm not saying don't ever drink alcohol. I'm just saying you need to be aware of what it's doing to your gut. And when we know that, then we can take proactive measures, right? We can just make sure and be aware that we're incorporating those gut defenders into our diets. So the story that I have for you is that my husband, and he said I could share all this. So he's recovering from a work injury, and that has met a series of doctor appointments this week. And so his primary physician, who I'd never met before, I sat in with them for the appointment, and she had been talking about getting him a little more pain relief with an anti-inflammatory relief with some higher dose kind of ibuprofen or Aleve type medicine. And so immediately I start thinking about, okay, well, he definitely needs some relief when it comes to the pain and it comes to the inflammation. But I immediately start thinking about the gut. And before I could even get out, well, what about his gut? She brought up that those medications can have, impact on gut health and can be really, hard for people to tolerate. And so she started talking about the mucus lining and how important that is. And she said that there's and I can't remember the name of it, and she broke it down into some very scientific detail, but that there is actually a anti-inflammatory medication that has a component to it that helps to rebuild the mucus lining in the gut. So you can get that relief that you need from an NSAID, but also it has this other component to it that's helping with the mucus lining. And I thought that was fascinating. And I was thrilled to see that she was factoring in how important that gut health is, when you're trying to treat other conditions. So I thought that was great. I was totally geeking out about it and trying to contain my excitement, which I don't know, maybe that's just weird, but it was great to see a doctor who seemed so in tune with that. And I really think that is on the minds of a lot of physicians, is how can we protect that gut, and to see it kind of in action was pretty amazing. And on that note, another kind of neat thing was that my husband changed up his diet about a year ago. He really started cutting out the sugar and the ultra processed foods. And while we were in there, he had his labs done. And so I asked if we could talk about his labs. And because now with my nutrition knowledge that I have from my classes, I can understand labs a little bit better than I used to. And the great thing is that his labs are way improved, even over a year. And, he's going to be 60. And, I think for a lot of people, they feel like, oh, it's like too late. Like, I don't know that there's anything I can do that's going to make a difference at my age. It totally can. And it totally did. And the proof was in the pudding, right? Like it's right there in front of him that what he's doing is working and he's better off than he was a year ago. So I'm bringing that up just for people who are wondering, is it worth trying? And I know a lot of us have people in our lives that we love that we need to feel better and we care about. We want them to be around for a really long time. So I just thought that was so encouraging. And I know for me, I went from having pretty good labs to having like excellent labs. And, I feel great, but it's also, it's cool to see. It's like having a great report card, right? I got all the A's and, I'm doing great. So that was kind of a neat thing that happened for us this week. But I just really was impressed with this doctor and her consideration of the gut and that mucosal lining. So things that you can do, because I think a lot of people have leaky gut and don't know it, but things that you can do to protect your gut, it's kind of the same as what we talked about last week, but it's getting bone broth in. Bone broth is really good for that mucosal lining. Fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, yogurt, berries, fiber, all of those things are really good to help with leaky gut. And also just kind of think about it, right? If you're on a round of antibiotics or you're on a round of having to take some pain meds, or you've just maybe been hitting happy hour a little too much, incorporate those things into your diet. Try to crowd out the bad with the good and see how that helps. And just protect the gut at all costs. This is probably like all I can say about that. But yeah, so just a few more tips to take with you, something to be aware of. Other gut disruptors, and I don't know that these necessarily disrupt the mucosal lining, but they have an effect on just the overall gut microbiome. So artificial sweeteners. So those can be a problem for sure. Even mouthwash, gum, anything like that can start disturbing the gut microbiome, also your oral microbiome. So just be aware of those artificial sweeteners too. But incorporate the good stuff, whole foods, and yeah, even just a few things. We talked about my probiotic stuff that I do: sauerkrauts, fermented beef sticks, and yogurt every day. So find that thing that you love, get it in your belly, and be wary. When you're taking things like ibuprofen, Tylenol, they're not necessarily completely harmless. They do damage to your gut, and so just to be aware of that, to bring kind of those gut defenders back in while you're using those. So I hope that helps a little bit. Next week, we're going to talk about fermented foods. I want to dive into that a little bit deeper and really kind of bring out some good ideas for fermented foods other than the ones that I typically talk about. So thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week. Bye.